So the first question, of course, is always going to be, what's it like to drive? Well, it may or may not surprise you to know, a lot like a car. There is only one speed, which is generally the case with most electric cars. Drives very much like a traditional automatic. That is to say, put it in drive, release your foot off the brake, and it will creep forward. It is, of course, very quiet. Now, this car's official numbers say that the engine is equivalent of about 109 horsepower. It'll do 0 to 60 in 10.8 seconds, and it'll go on to a top speed of around 90 miles an hour. Now, I've driven cars with similar performance figures, and I gotta say, this feels pretty nippy. It's probably got a lot to do with the fact that you've got that instant torque. You know, the car delivers basically all of its torque all the time that you want it to, and there's no shifting of gears, nothing like that. If you were driving a 110 horsepower naturally aspirated petrol engine, you'd of course have to be thrashing the arse off it to get it to move, but this one, not so. It just, whenever you want the power, it delivers the power, and to be honest, it feels like it picks up just as keenly at 60 as it does at 20. In terms of day-to-day performance, this car is perfectly adequate. Unfortunately, the ride is not so great for a sort of big 4x4 looking thing with quite generous profile tyres. Of course, they're reasonably narrow, low rolling resistance items, like a lot of these things tend to be. I mean, it handles okay. This is not really a car where you worry about handling, is it? Let's be honest here. But I would like the ride to be a little plusher. The problem with electric cars at the current time really is the fact that because this technology is reasonably new and reasonably expensive, that the cars have a price tag that maybe gives us unrealistic expectations. I mean, this, for example, is a £30,000 odd car before any sort of grant. Now, in the United Kingdom, you get £4,500 off for buying a plug-in electric car. That means this is more like £25,000. Now, let's just ignore that for a second. I mean, a £30,000, I mean, if you go to Kia themselves and give them £30,000, they'll happily deliver you a 2-litre turbo Stinger, which is, you know, leagues ahead of this in terms of just about everything. But, you know, these are the prices that you must pay for basically being an early adopter. Of course, the joy is that, you know, I've thus far done, well, just over 110 miles in this car, and my total spend for electricity has been nothing. Now, I'm going to keep track of how much I pay because some of the charging points you go to do charge you. Aha, pun intended, I suppose. And I'm going to keep a log of how much that's cost me, and then at the end of the video I'll compare that with what this would have cost me if I'd done it in a traditional fossil fuel vehicle. Now, you have down here on the dash a couple of important gauges. Of course, you've got your speed, but let's not worry about that. You've got your battery charge, which dominates proceedings, and next to it you have a meter showing you how much you're testing the engine. Now, one thing that does kind of annoy me with these cars is that they've got this kind of mad, crazy drive to have all this eco stuff about them. I mean, like, I've already bought an electric car, you know, if I've bought into the whole electric car idea, I don't keep pestering me about eco stuff. Now, this car starts by default in eco mode. I generally turn it off, which is done by pressing the eco off button down here. And what eco's really done, amongst other things, is just blunted the throttle response, which just defeats the point of an electric car. I mean, it takes away a lot of the fun. Now, the car's got a few gears. Well, I said it's got one speed, that's accurate, and it can go forwards and backwards. Now, if ever you've been in a Prius or several other electric cars, you'll have noticed a gear called B. I mean, let's face it, if you get into one of these cars, you know, you'd like to think that they're fairly self-explanatory. You know, down here I've got P, R, N, D. That's going to be familiar to basically anybody that's driven an automatic. But B, took me a while to find this out. I got in a Prius as a taxi when I was in London years ago, and I found this out. So basically it's an engine braking mode. I kept thinking it was bulb because I'm a photography person. So What this does is it basically means that your default engine braking becomes a lot stronger. It's pretty much ideal if you're somewhere where you're going down a very large hill, basically. So it just means that the car's going to try and recover more energy by default when you lift your foot off the throttle. Now, one thing this car doesn't do so well, it has a combination of regenerative and traditional braking. Traditional, of course, being, discs, pads, calipers, that sort of thing. The transition between the two isn't seamless. Obviously, when you initially push the pedal down, the car's going to try and use as much regenerative braking as it can, because it's the most eco-friendly. That's the best way to harvest back some of the energy that you've spent going forwards. And the aim with these cars, I guess, is to try not waste as much electricity as you can. Now, granted, I've been driving this car for the most part, blaring out Heart 80s and classic gold radio. It's got DAB as standard, which I really like. First thing that happens when you press the brakes down is the regenerative thing kicks in, but then you've also got your traditional brakes. And there's a transition. You can feel it happening. It's not the smoothest, and it's still taking me a little bit of time to get used to. When you modulate the brake pedal, you put a bit of different pressure down, the response that it gives you back isn't as linear as I would like it to be. It doesn't always reward you with the braking effort that you think you have earned. It's a bit odd. I suspect I will get used to it, but there's been a couple of times where I've sort of tried to slow the car down and then kind of gone, oh, hang on a minute, it's not slowing as quickly as I want. And then you press the brake pedal a little bit more, obviously the disc brakes kick in, and you can then feel it slowing then a lot more. The car does brake, absolutely fine if you need it to, but you just got to get used to the way the pedal works. I suspect this is something that, all car makers struggle with. I know the new Honda NSX, the brake pedal itself is actually not connected to the brakes in any mechanical way. But apparently they managed to get the brake feel right, but then for a car that's, the same price as a Lamborghini, you'd hope that they had. Driving position is quite high in this thing because, that seems to be what everybody wants now. One thing I'm really not fond of, community speed watch. So interior-wise, this car's not good. The exterior is available in a selection of 3 kind of funky colours. My mother thinks the car looks lovely, by the way, appearances are completely subjective. I don't like the look of the outside of this car. I know loads and loads and loads of people that do. I know Kia don't really expect to sell many of this particular version of the Soul, but the regular Soul, I think, sells quite well for them. I see them about quite frequently. Now, the overall design of it is fine. It's not too bad. Everything's kind of placed where I want it to be. But what's with the colour scheme? I mean, if you're fans of kinky novellas, this really is 50 Shades of Grey in here. It's just a bit horrid, really. I'm not sure what possessed. This is the only choice, by the way. The only choice. You get this weird. I just want to call it vegan fabric on the inside. I did actually think for a little bit that they were trying to go the whole eco thing and do like a proper vegan interior, but there's still leather, or certainly leather effect stuff in here, so I don't quite know what they're doing. The grey, it's just, this just feels horrible. If this was black leather in here, this would be just way nicer. The seats themselves are actually comfy enough. They're not supportive at all, actually. But that's not really a concern in this kind of car. The sort of spaceship kind of tweeters up here are a bit interesting. I suppose maybe someone sat in an Aston DBS and went, wonder if we can do that in the new Kia. It's okay. It kind of works. The sound system is actually pretty okay. Questions my mother had for me included things like, when does the cam belt need doing? It did take us some time to get our head around the fact that there is no cam belt. You service these things pretty much like a regular car. Kia's really good. They offer a 7-year warranty, and the Kia's warranty thing, I think I really should underline, is a really good warranty. It's a proper warranty. It's not like after a couple of years, actually, it's just rubbish. No, full, proper 7-year warranty. Really good. And if you buy a Kia that's less than 18 months old, they will top it up for you. So you get the 7 years again, which is remarkable. And people have said to me, why can they do that? Well, they can do it because I looked up some charts, and basically top of the reliability survey in a couple of different ones is, Kia. nice. Oh, Volvo. That's cool. And just earlier, a Nissan Juke Nismo. So, you know, as I drive, this car is okay. I mean, thus far, my biggest issue is the range. It's just not enough. Mum quite likes it. She quite likes this sort of car where it's kind of a little bit taller. Now, for someone like her father, you know, he can't walk very easily. He's got a stick. So for him, actually having a car that's higher is much better because he can just sort of step straight into it. You know, there's plenty of room in here. You know, for her average kind of shopping trip, there's enough room in the back. I mean, I'm trying to actually convince her to buy an electric car because I think for her it will be ideal because she keeps her cars a very long time. You know, her current car she's had for 11 years. So if she worked out the fuel savings she would make over that period, then it would be pretty considerable. Plus the fact, you know, she's currently got a diesel because, you know, like a lot of people, she was kind of encouraged to buy diesels and told diesels were the future, etc., etc., etc. Well, I think over the next 10 years, owning a diesel car is going to be very, very difficult. That's one reason I sort of got rid of my Alpha, was because I then wanted to go to a few places where diesels were just suddenly becoming really, really uncool. But she's concerned about, you know, how you charge it. Where she lives, you know, she lives in town and she's got a garage and she's got a parking space, but no electricity in it. So for her, she has to charge away from home. So one of my missions at the minute is to find out where are the charging spaces, how easy are they to use, you know, can someone like my mum just walk up and kind of use it, and will it be simple and logical, you know, how far does the car really go, etc., etc., etc. So I'm going to keep driving, and then I'm going to give you guys another update tomorrow. So I'll check in with you all then.